Look, this is a major presentation of work. So there is a lot of underlying themes, concepts. It covers imagery from the beginning of the medium to today. It looks at portraiture and landscape and the built environment. It looks at various cultures in the world. It looks at these different historical periods. So that's the framework of all of that. And so what is it really we are trying to investigate and show? And I think from my perspective, it's very much the individuum and the individuum within society and the human race in general. So and to me the real question is kind of who are we as an individual, and how do we present ourselves as an individual? How are we looked at from the outside? And how are we in society? So we are not only an individual, but we are part of a broader structure. And then this whole question of this diversity of ourselves. So this whole questions of who we are as from a gender perspective, from a race perspective, from a political perspective, from a sexual perspective. So it's kind of this investigation of all the various natures and parts and manifestations we are as a human. And I think that comes out in this exhibition. It actually goes deeply into it because it goes into it historically, and it goes into it from different culture perspective. And what is the outcome of it? I think the outcome of it is that there is a universality of the being. And it doesn't matter whether we are German or Chinese or African or Mexican. I think we all have the same kind of issues. We all have the same kind of desires and wants, and we all want to be truly ourselves. You know, it develops in a very specific way. This exhibition, it actually develops very personal with regards to me, because it's kind of, it starts out with a group of German artists who used a very specific approach, who kind of looked at the world and they were trying to understand. And so they used methods which we know as taxonomy and typology, meaning where they ordered and classified things, and then they compared things. And whether these were now plants, or whether these were industrial structures, or whether these were people, it was applied universally. And so that kind of is the beginning of me actually collecting, and the beginning of me actually too looking at the world. And then from that, it develops in all different kind of directions. And so staying with the portrait or focusing on the portrait, it would start with this German photographer, August Sander, who kind of tried to understand the German people. He was trying to look at them, and he was trying to document them and to represent them in all of their diversity, but all with regards to their uniqueness. So it was like this question of what is kind of this German or this society, and then what are we as individuals. And so he was the master, kind of, when you look at photography, of really investigating that. And he used a very specific approach. He classified the Germans, and he spent his whole life doing, I think, over 45,000 images. You know, there are, I don't know how many books. And that's kind of the basis, that was for me the basis of this investigation of portraiture. And then it developed from there to other cultures and to other investigations. And when we look at just this space, we are sitting here, and behind me we have the work of Rotimi Fani-Kayode, who was this very young African artist who was grew up in a very, very established, very classical Nigerian family, and who was gay, and who investigated in his work, actually through all his short life, because he died very, very young, he was investigating his sexuality and his cultural heritage and his body, etc. So we are going from this very kind of organized German, looking at the society and categorizing it, now to very individualistic kind of investigations. Or here at the other end here, to stay within that theme, we have Zanele Muholi, who was looking at a lesbian culture in Southern Africa, which was tremendously under pressure. It was kind of pursued and persecuted, and she made them very visible. She made them very powerful. She created this very powerful group. She made them actually very proud and individualistic of themselves. So these kind of investigations, or if the next room here we looked at, or we are looking at, kind of, let's call it the other from a Western perspective. The ones who are not supposedly the same as we are. And then how is that being, this other, how is that being presented? And obviously there was a very specific approach they did, and basically putting them into certain categories, in creating certain genres for them, into not looking at them as us or similar to us, but as something very different. And so that investigation is, for example, a very, very important one, because it really goes back. It obviously plays in today's society still a role, but it obviously has changed over 150 years. But these images bring us back to that period and let us see what the approach was at that point in time. And it kind of lets us see too, in a way, of how far we have come, and actually how far we have not come. So I think there's only one South American artist in this exhibition, so I want to state this very clearly. And there is a reason why that is, because I think I talked about that earlier. because my approach was very systematic and it was very focused. And I really examined before and researched before what I was going to do. Okay? So I think it was like 15 years ago or whatever, did look in a certain way at South America. But to me, just because of the connections I had, and just of circumstances in a certain way, it became Africa. Okay? It became Africa because there was this very important exhibition in New York which I saw, and I was fascinated by it. And then it became Africa because one of the key, most important curators kind of became my friend, and so we traveled together extensively. And so I got an introduction in an exposure which was very, very unique. And so then, and I think that's a little bit my nature as an individual, then I think when I focus on something, I focus very intensely and I go very deep and broad into it. But I was in Puebla a few months ago. I was at the Amparo Museum where we showed part of this collection here too. And I did start to look at South American artists. And actually we are going to do a studio visit tomorrow. And I actually have a number of ones which I'm interested in and I will look at. But that's besides with regards to now the South American Mexican artists. But to answer the question, I think, you see, the issues are applicable and obvious and present. I don't need actually a South American artist or a Mexican artist to show the issue of individuality, or show issues of sexuality, or show issues of persecution, or show issues of the land and the landscape and the history of the land and the markings in the land of events which have happened. I actually think it will be very interesting for the audiences here to look at this. These images are not familiar to them. They are very different culturally, but the issues which are being investigated here and which are being shown and the cross connections which are being made, I think are very obvious. And so I hope that this will raise a lot of questions, and I hope it will stimulate a lot of discussion and kind of this feeling, oh wow, you know, I can connect to that, I can relate to that, and I think that would be the beauty if that is the case. Okay, so you know, I define my my collecting in a broader perspective. So collecting is only one leg, one segment of what we are doing. So we are collecting, we are exhibiting, we are publishing, and we are doing a lot of research. Okay, so it's a multi-faceted and tiered approach. And so, and I feel it is important to have that because you can reach different audiences and you can investigate in a completely different way, thematically, like that. So for example, looking at this exhibition here, it's here in Monterey, and I'm very happy that it is here in Monterey. But it's in the city, and if there is a publication on this exhibition, you know, we can show it and distribute it throughout the world in a way. I mean, a lot of more people have access to that publication. So for example, publications are very, very important, and we are now on our 6th publication with regards to the collection. And I was just in Germany, and we just finished this last book, and that is a book on contemporary Chinese photography and media out of the collection. So, so that is a key aspect. Exhibitions is a key aspect because we have our own exhibition spaces. So we have a space in New York and we have a space in Germany. The space in New York is a relatively manageable space, and kind of the way we look at it, it's kind of an experimental space. It's like a project space. Or we can look at it too, it's like an incubator. You can play around with it. You can try out things and see how they work, and how you can show and how you can create cross connections. The space in Germany is a much more established, a much more multifaceted exhibition space with several buildings, all different kind of structures and configurations. So that's very serious. It takes a lot of time, and it's a much broader approach. But that space in Germany allows us then to really pull things together and to show them, and then do a publication with it. And then the third leg is for us really traveling exhibitions. And that means that's why we are very happy to be here, or we were very happy to be in Puebla, because the works are together, it's conceptualized, they are framed, they are created, so they can be transported and they can be shown. So this is the broader picture. Let me go back to your question of collecting. Now, about collecting and why collecting certain things. So there is, with regards to the collection, I would say there are 3 aspects which are important. The first aspect is, and you can see that here when you walk through this exhibition, it is really the approach of, it's not a single image. It's not 1 or 2 works of an artist and then there's another artist of 1 or 2 works. It is really here, it's bodies of work, it is essays, it is series, it is tableaux, it is typologies, it is grids. That is a significant nature of the approach we are taking. The second thing is we are not looking at, yes, we do have some highly established, well-known artists in the collection. I mean, they are represented in the collection, no question. But that is not the main objective. The main objective is not who's who in photography. The objective is much more kind of cultures and concepts and ideas which have not been explored, which have not been exhibited significantly or everywhere, which have not been written about extensively. So when I think back now about African photography, we have done 18 exhibitions on African photography. 18. I don't think there's any institution in the world who has done over 8 years, 18 exhibitions. We have done 4 major publications on African photography. And these are serious, deeply researched with scholars and curators. We have done symposiums with Columbia University, with New York University, with the Institute of Fine Arts in New York, in some of these subjects where we have invited scholars and curators and artists to investigate certain topics and then use that as the basis for some of these publications. So, and then the other aspect is, you see, so it is important to have a critical to have a focus on things, to create excellence in what you are doing, and to create attention, because if I do something today and something else tomorrow and something else the next day, I don't create the attention. So it's by focusing on something, you create attention, and you become known as kind of the expert. And that helps you then to go and support certain things, meaning to support the artists, to get them higher visibility, to get them broader out into the universe. So, for example, a very interesting one is Saint King, which is in the exhibition several times here. You know, we did his the Black Photo album, which became a very, very important book, which got a lot of attention. And through that, I mean, he really had exhibitions in all different kind of places, and became recognized for what he truly is, which is like an artist. He is African, but he is as good as you know, all the ones we know, and you know, nobody or not that many people had heard of him before. So that's kind of, so it is from the artist's perspective, and I think it is from the audience's perspective to get confronted and exposed to this.